It's very Lebow. I decided after the hundreds of trials that I've been in, some of them are just so much more interesting than others. So I'm going to start doing some videos of some of the crazy or the different or the trials that made impact in real estate circles. All my trials were real estate. There was a couple of ones that crossed the line. The one that crossed the line I'm going to talk about today was real estate, but with criminal charges involved. And this is fascinating. This one is, it's going to take a few minutes, so settle back. This is not a 60-second clip. I'm telling you that right up front. So it's some years ago, and I was hired by a law firm that took a big case on in contingency, which means the law firm only gets paid if they win the case. This case had been dragging on. What had happened is two guys came along that said they're renovators and they needed a backer because they were buying houses, fixing them up, and reselling them. That's what on paper. And they went and they found a bank manager in one of the prominent banks, major branch too. And they started to do a little bit of business with him, small loans. And then they started getting personal with him. And they started finding out he liked to gamble a little bit. He liked his alcohol and he loved his women. And in turn, over the next year or so, this guy was wined, dined, sent to Vegas, and with hookers. So they had a big bite into this bank manager. They had him dirty. And what happens is, along comes a psychiatrist who is an investor and is talking to his banker and says he's looking for some, where to put his money. The banker says, I got these two guys, and he introduces them. And the psychiatrist lends them some money. He gets his money back quite quickly and with a good profit. Psychiatrist tells more of his buddies, they're all psychiatrists. Eventually, 13 psychiatrists have pooled their money and they're throwing money into this. A couple of psychiatrists were no longer practicing psychiatrists. One was I better be careful here, but high up in the education field, and another one was a civil servant. So now they're lending money, and it turns out these two guys were never really fixing up the houses. They were giving them bills for $50,000, $60,000 when all they did was fix some windows maybe and paint the place. So the whole thing collapsed eventually because the real estate market took a bit of a hiccup. They couldn't sell these properties for profits. It was like a Ponzi scheme. They were taking money in all the time. And as long as the cash flow kept coming, they were paying the investors back with their own money as long as they kept throwing money in. So it became a fraud case, and there's a real estate component to it. So this is where it gets really interesting. So I'm called in, and at that time, my main function, there were no real estate agents involved. My main function was in the appraisal capacity. And as an ex-renovator, did they do the renovations? Were there any signs of renovations to the houses? I got access to certain houses by court order. I got in. There were no renovations done. And what were the values? And it turned out they were even buying houses and inflated prices just to keep getting money in. So they weren't even buying houses to make a profit. They were just buying houses to get the money. So when it collapsed, they got charged. They got charged with fraud. Now it's a criminal case, and it's dragging on for weeks. I have been going back and forth, and this sort of made me a little, how do I put it, jaundiced towards the psychiatry field. I've never been a great lover of psychiatry. We're in a meeting with all these psychiatrists in a big boardroom and a lawyer and myself, and we're going through, and these guys they were in la la land. I mean, they were just out there. I mean, some of the stuff, they had no idea what they did. They didn't understand the ramifications, the lending. They didn't grasp it, except they knew they got screwed, but they didn't understand it all. Anyways, I walked the meeting into the hall with the lawyer, and I said to him, do you realize out of 15 people in the room, you and I were the only two normal people in that room? And I said, but I'm not sure about you. Anyways, we go to trial. Now we're in trial. Now this gets really interesting. And the trial's dragging on, dragging on. Now I find out one of the two the defendants that was charged criminally had been is not was but is when he was in Canada illegally. He was a wanted IRA hitman. He murdered people, and I'm going to testify against this guy. Okay, so this is good. So we're in the trial, and the judge is very nice, and the judge is goading me a little bit. And a lot of times the judge will ask the witness a question. The judge turns to me, he says, you're holding back. I said, Your Honor. He says, you're holding back. I said, holding back what, Your Honor? He says, you're trying to be polite in the courtroom and use certain language. I go, well, that's why we're in the courtroom, Your Honor. He says, I was a criminal lawyer for years. There's nothing you could say that I haven't heard. And then he turns to the stenographer, the court reporter, and says to her, have you heard every bad word there is? And she shakes her head and says, yes, Your Honor. He says, if you were speaking to one of your friends and you were describing these properties as somebody else in real estate, how would you describe them? And I don't care what you say right now, just say it. I said, well, Your Honor, these are low-end properties. There's junkers, crappers, and shitters. The judge looks at me and says, was that so hard to say? I said, well, Your Honor, I've never said something like that in a courtroom before. He says, that's okay. So about the next day, I'm back in the stand, and it's lunchtime. And the judge says to me about that last property that you were talking about. I said, yes, Your Honor. The location, where is it? I said, Your Honor, I'm sorry, where is it? He says, well, in your classification of those three. I said, you mean the junkers, the crappers, and the shitters? Yeah, I said, Your Honor, it doesn't even make the charts. It's below the shitter. And the judge says, as he starts to rise, we all stand up, and the judge says, I live around the corner, and walks out of the court and goes to his chambers. I'm like, white. I just told the judge that he lives in one of the worst neighborhoods in Toronto. And now nobody can talk to me because when you're on the stand, you can't talk about the case. So I go to lunch by myself and I'm having trouble digesting. Oh my God, I've just insulted the judge. What have I done? What have I done? And finally, it comes to me and I get clear. Now, those of you that know Toronto, I was on the other side of Victoria Park. In those days, that wasn't a great area. The other side, east of Victoria Park, is the famous beach area, the beaches of Toronto. He comes back, he says, did you have a nice lunch, Mr. Lebow? I said, Your Honor, you were having fun with me, weren't you? You live in the beach. And he smiles. He said, let's get on with it. And it goes to show you, even the judges have a sense of humor. So this case, that was an interesting case. Junkers, crappers, shitters, and judge, you live in the worst. You live worse. So now the IRA hit, and the story gets even more. Finish the story. The guy, they win the case, and it's a very big settlement. The bank has to pay up because their guy's dirty. The bank manager's dirty. It's a sealed verdict, but there's over $1 million in law fees. I'm in for about 10 grand in my fees, and we're all on contingency. And what happens is I turn around and I get a call, and the one guy that got the most of the claim, they were all using his one name to sue all of them. Not all 13 were plaintiffs, only one plaintiff. It turned out he never told anybody. He owed Canada Revenue a fortune, over $1 million in back taxes. He got a verdict. They won the case. And in turn, Canada Revenue seized the award. I didn't get paid. I was on the bankruptcy list as a creditor. The law firm was owned for over $1 million. Within a couple of months, the law firm ceased being a law firm. It all broke up. As a matter of fact, I met one of the partners and I said, what did you do? He says, we debanded or something like that. So where's the rest of the story? The rest of the story is there was the one guy was the IRA hit that. I don't know what happened to him. He went to jail. The other guy, the guy that perpetuated this fraud, I had said to one of the lawyers that this is fascinating. There should be a movie about this. How do you know about the movie? I said, what movie? He said, this isn't the first time this guy committed fraud. He committed fraud years ago, went to jail. He came out of jail, went back, called a meeting of all the people he screwed over, sat him down. They all came to the meeting thinking, hey, we're going to get some money back. He says to them, did I do a great con on you guys? Yeah. He says, here's what I want to do. I want you to invest in this movie we're going to do, and I'm going to do a movie about me conning you, and you'll get all your money back. These people threw in their money, and the guy did some crappy little movie that never got released, so he got the second time. So the stories, this was unbelievable. The story took so long to get all through the story. IRA hitman, con men, dozens of houses, weeks and weeks. A year I was on the file, not getting paid at the end. This was a Lulu. Take care, and more tales coming from the courtroom as I progress. Out of hundreds of trials, believe me, I got stories. Barry Lebow, be well.